Moonville Tunnel. The town of Moonville, Ohio would probably be long forgotten if not for its rail tunnel. In fact, if the tunnel wasn't there, the town might never have existed. The tunnel was built when a local landowner offered a shortcut to the rail company building a track towards Cincinnati. This allowed him to haul coal and clay, and a few small settlements sprung up for people to take advantage. Moonville was among them, and its population peaked at about 100 in 1870. The railway around the tunnel seemed almost designed to be a death trap. It was thin, and it led out onto a trestle above a high canyon that was itself just wide enough to fit the rail tracks. Given that it was a significant shortcut compared to walking around the valley, at least 5 people died after being hit by trains, the most recent in 1986. The line is no longer in use, except by an infamous phantom. There are a few stories of the ghost's origins. In some versions he was simply a drunk who took the tunnel as a shortcut home. When he heard a train coming, he waved his lantern at it, but it didn't stop in time. One story says that during a hard winter, the town was running desperately low on supplies. Trains were passing by but not stopping, so locals hatched a plan to get someone to stand in the tunnel and wave a lamp to stop the train. The person they chose fell asleep and ran into the tunnel too late. The train killed him. The lantern-waving man is said to still be there, trying to flag down trains with his lantern. Some reports say that the rail company installed a signal at the mouth of the tunnel and told drivers to ignore any lights they saw inside. The story has inspired songs, and there's even a novel about the story of a conductor that met an unfortunate fate there. Hoosac Tunnel. The Hoosac Tunnel in Massachusetts is an interesting piece of civil engineering. When it opened in 1876, it was the longest tunnel in North America, and the second longest in the world. Yet the workplaces of the 19th century aren't remembered for their safety culture, and those involving explosives inside mountains were worse than most. By the time it was finished, Hoosac Tunnel had very much earned its nickname, the Bloody Pit. The worst of the many accidents during construction occurred October 17, 1867. Fumes leaking from a gas light met a candle and caused an explosion, sending a wave of flame and debris down the main shaft. 13 people died, and when a worker was lowered to investigate, he emerged sputtering and saying, "No hope, no hope." The shaft flooded, and bodies floated to the top. They were among 195 people killed during the 24-year project. Tales of ghosts began even before the tunnel was finished. In 1865, 3 explosives engineers, known as Brinkman, Nash, and Kelly, were working in the tunnel. Kelly set off one charge too early, burying his colleagues. Kelly disappeared not long afterwards, and was found strangled to death in the tunnel. The murder was never solved. It may have been friends of Brinkman and Nash seeking vengeance, but many workers believed it was the spirits of the dead men that had done it. Workers reported hearing moans of pain and were too scared to enter the tunnel at night. After the 1867 disaster, people reported seeing apparitions of miners on the mountainside. Not all reports of the ghosts are bad. Joe Imboko worked in the tunnel in the 1970s, and claimed that disembodied voices twice warned him of dangers, and saved him from being flattened by a train. Churchill Tunnel. The collapsed railway tunnel under Churchill in Richmond, Virginia has the distinction of being haunted, not just by ghosts, but also by a vampire. The tunnel originally opened in 1873 but closed in 1902. It was in the 1920s, with a growth in both the city's population and economy, that the local rail company decided to reopen the 1,200-meter tunnel. It needed to be cleaned and reinforced before it was ready for use. On the afternoon of October 2, 1925, 200 men were working in the tunnel. They stood on flat cars, pulled by a steam locomotive, working on the tunnel's roof. The ceiling above the locomotive collapsed, burying the train in rubble and clay near the western entrance. Steam squirted from the squashed boiler, scalding the train's fireman. He was able to crawl out of the tunnel to the east, but he died of his injuries in the hospital. The train's driver came off even worse. He was found dead after an 8-day rescue operation, buried in the cab. He was badly burnt and a lever was jammed into his chest. Record-keeping was very informal, and most of the workmen were day laborers, but at least one other person was never recovered. The locomotive, and likely a few bodies, are still in the tunnel. It's since been filled with sand, and the entrance is blocked with concrete. Those near the tunnel have reported hearing a number of sounds. Voices saying "Get me out," the sound of digging, and even the screech of locomotive wheels have all been reported. The Richmond vampire, a famous resident of a nearby cemetery, is said to have feasted on the dead workers. Rescuers in the days after the collapse found him crouched over a body. Before seeing his bloody fangs, they chased the vampire back to the crypt of a man that had died in 1922. Gold Cap Road Tunnels. Gold Cap Road is a winding route through the wilderness of central Colorado. The 56-kilometer stretch has 3 tunnels, imaginatively named 1, 2, and 3. A local legend says that a school bus full of children was traveling the road in 1987, when Tunnel 3 collapsed on top of it, and killed everyone inside.